Hey guys, this is Elon with Inside Fighting, and we're back with another episode. Now, a lot of the time I talk about martial arts from different parts of the world, but one part of the world I haven't talked about is Africa. And there's some really great martial arts out of Africa, and I would like to start highlighting them. So here we go. This first one's going to be on Dembe boxing. You're going to like it. In fact, you might even love it.
Pow pow inside fighting, yeah, dangerous martial arts. Pow pow, ooh ah.
All right, so before we deep dive into Dembe, I'd like to just mention my store. If you want to support the channel, go to InsideFightingStore.com. There's lots of cool stuff on there. There's shirts, there's canvases, there's little mugs. But most importantly, I have my instructional on there, and I really want to spread my system, the RAID system, Rapid Aggressive Intelligent Defense. If you're into real urban survival systems or street survival systems, this instructional is perfect for you. So go check it out. I always say, if you hate it, just be honest with me. You bought it, you don't like it, contact me, be like, look, I think this was a ripoff. I'll refund you. That's how confident I am in it. It's a really good instructional, and there's going to be many more that follow it. And eventually I'll get the whole system out to you, and you'll be able to learn it. And hopefully we can do seminars. Hopefully we can do seminars and certify people. But that's down the road. Starts with this first instructional. I appreciate everyone who's purchased it and supported the channel. So thank you so much for that. All right, so let's start looking at Dembe boxing. Dembe boxing is a style of martial arts that started in northern Nigeria, and it's kind of getting a resurgence from what I see. People really like watching these fights. They're kind of unique to themselves. There's no other martial art like this. Now, they're from northern Nigeria, the Hausa people. And again, what's special about this started in the 10th or 11th century. They would put on these festivals, and butchers and blacksmiths would prove their toughness at these festivals and fight. It's a ritualistic way of fighting. All fighting, in many ways, is ritualistic, right? We all kind of watch these sports to see who the tougher guy is. There is this ritualistic element to it. It goes all the way back to the gladiators and all these different groups of people who would go into rings and fights or do public fights for people. Every culture has these. They're used as rites of passage a lot of the time, which is something I'm a strong believer in. I believe that having an outlet like this for young men, something like Dembe fighting or Dembe boxing, can allow young boys to have an outlet, much like boxing in America. If you're in a rough neighborhood, gives you an outlet, gives you a path to deal with your emotions, and it gives you mentors, which is super important. So I understand the ritualistic element of it, and I think it's super important. So let's just look at what the rules are here. You just saw some hardcore knockouts. We're going to see some more of those throughout this video because that's what this is. This is just rough fighting with a very specific rule set. So you have 3 rounds of 3 minutes each. Now, the way you can win the fight is by either winning 2 concurrent rounds via points, and the way you get points is by either knocking the guy down or knocking him out of the arena. You get more points for knocking him down. Another way to win right away is just by KO. Knock the guy out, you win the fight. Now, those are pretty good rules because that's what fighting is. You can control where the guy's going because you just keep pushing him around. You can win that way. You can hurt him. Now, let's just look at some of the strikes permitted. You're only allowed, and this is one of the more unique things about this system, you're only allowed to use the wrapped hand. One hand is wrapped. You can only use that hand for striking. You can't use your free hand for striking. You're only allowed to use the unwrapped hand for blocking, clinching, and distance management. Meaning you can't really start standing with the wrapped hand in your lead and fighting with it. And in some fights, not all, kicks are permitted. That's been iffy depending on which fight you watch. So if we look right here, they have a wrapped hand. They're keeping it back. They start off by holding hands, and they break, and then they're going to fight. Now, it's important to note the wrapped hand is called the spear. The free hand is called the shield. So spear and shield. This is really spear and shield fighting disguised without weapons. You're actually learning how to do spear and shield fighting. Now, you're going to notice this is a very direct, brutal, ritualistic style of fighting because that wrapped hand is actually heavier because of the cloth. And it's not like this is soft cloth cushioning. It actually is just rough cloth that they wrap their hands with. And it has cultural significance. It's meant to connect you to your ancient fighters. It's meant to identify the fighter as well. But it's also meant to protect the hand so you can hit harder with it and so that it's more weighted. So you're hitting these guys with like a battering ram. These guys hit hard. You could see it, and they swing very, very wild and very, very fast. Now, look at them. They're literally putting their hands in each other's faces. So you're allowed to use your free hand to blind the other guy so you could land these looping overhand rights. And 90% of the strikes you see in this system are these kind of looping, wild, heavy strikes. Now, what I've noticed here also is very different than, let's say, boxing. That was a beautiful, beautiful kick right in his throat. Damn. That was right in his throat, fellas. He did not like that. That's it. Okay, so what's different from, let's say, modern day boxing and a lot of other styles you'll see is they'll keep this hand here and this hand down here. Literally, I'm just making everything blurry, but let's just go this way. Literally out here, like a spear, like a shield, like they're defending with it. And this is where they move. Now, when I talk about the spear position, it's literally this. They're just kind of doing a more loose version of it. And they keep this for looping like this, almost like you were going to stab with a spear over top. And they also whip back and forward with it. And they even come under. So they don't fight like a traditional fighter where they're trying to come in clean. They go very loopy with their strikes and very hard and wild because they're trying to knock you out. And they only have one hand to do it. And this hand is out here protecting and guarding. It's actually not a bad tactic. There is practical application to it. I found this guy who I will post his information down below, but he's actually talking about how Dembe boxing is really spear and shield boxing. And I like how he demonstrates it because he's literally showing it's like you're holding a spear and a shield and that you use the spear to attack and the shield to defend, and that philosophy can be applied to empty hand. So he actually picks up. See how he's moving here? He's kind of hiding his far hand. You don't see it coming at you when he attacks with it. And he's showing how the free hand, which is the lead hand, is extended out and can defend. See, he's showing the different angles of strikes you can do. And it literally looks like spear and shield fighting. Now, what's interesting is when he picks up the spear and shield, as he's about to do here, you can see how it directly translates. So they're training, essentially weapons-based training, without having to have the weapons in their hands, which is quite brilliant, that you create an entire system around your weapon system, but you don't actually have to have the weapons. And for sure, it makes you better at spear and shield, which is how people would have had to fight back in the day in actual warfare. So this is a ritualistic fight, but what it's actually giving you is tactics and techniques for real warfare at the time. And it was a way to train it. You cannot train spear and shield full contact without killing somebody. You know what I mean? If you're going to take a spear and you're going to jam it into someone's chest, they're dead. But you can do ritualistic fighting as a way to preserve the movements and to actually go hard and be reactive to things. Look, exactly the same thing. So quite interesting to see that. And he even shows how you could use this philosophy for modern day boxing. And he puts on gloves and he just uses one hand to attack and one hand to defend. Okay, now, is this how I would recommend to fight in boxing? No, it's not how I would recommend to fight in boxing. But I teach similar philosophies to this in the sense that I use a style when I'm fighting sometimes called the spear. I literally call it the spear because kind of the opposite. This hand is my spear. It's extended out, but it's the same idea where this is blocking. This is back, but it's still protecting. But this can come in and attack. It can come in an elbow. But I'm just a little tighter when I do it, and I have a little bit smaller movement. But the philosophy is essentially similar. And again, I would never give up being able to attack with my lead hand just for the sole idea of defending it. But I had a great fighter who was a friend of mine, good friend of mine. And he told me that in one of his pro K1 fights, what won him the fight was his coach telling him, stop trying to do fancy stuff and just throw your right. Just throw your right hand. That's all you got to tag him with is this one weapon. And he said when he started throwing his right and he just focused on what his best weapon was, that clean straight right, he knocked the guy out. And a lot of the time we get caught up in too many options when we're fighting. And I always say, keep it simple, stupid. Kiss. You got to keep it simple when you're fighting. And sometimes just having a clear point, clear pathway can be a great way to spar, great way to train, and a great thing to do in a high stress situation when you're really fighting. In other words, if you can keep this up, you can defend yourself and you know all you're going to hit this guy with is a straight cross. Until that doesn't work, don't worry about other tactics. Follow through with what you do best. Use your best tool. So they're developing a very specific way to fight here. Now, let's just look at this last video here, which is great. I mean, you really notice how tough these guys are. Shout out to African Warriors channel. They have so many fights on their channel, crazy knockouts. And it's a really exciting fighting system. So I notice again here, footwork wise, the footwork is a little bit more wild. They kind of try and run around each other. Sometimes, see, he circled in the wrong way and he got caught with a looping overhand right or left. This guy's left-handed, and that probably threw him off too. This system, if you're a lefty, is really in your favor because everyone who's training it is training to fight against one hand, and that's often the guy's right hand. So the second you are a southpaw in this system, you have a massive advantage because how many people are training southpaws? I've been watching a lot of these fights, and very few people are southpaws. Here again, we have a southpaw fighting. So I just think it gives you a huge advantage because you're going to train more against people who fight the way you're expecting them to fight, and they're training against right-handed people mostly too, and then they have to fight you who's left-handed. And look, the southpaw hurt him. So maybe it is a huge advantage. See, 2 times now, the southpaws are winning. Now, what I will say about this system, again, is it's very specific to what it is, which is real ritualistic fighting. It's a tough sport. I think Dana White should have really started this or picked this up instead of slap fighting. I don't understand slap fighting. I think it's the dumbest sport in the world, personally. Do I watch it sometimes when it pops up on my shorts? Yeah. Hell yeah, do I like seeing people start talking about cereal after they get smacked in the face. I don't know if you saw that video, but a guy literally rants about his cereal after getting smacked in the head. But you have no opportunity to defend, and you're just smacking someone in the face. This here has real cultural significance, has a following, is an art that respects an entire people and highlights their history, and yet it gets no attention like slap fighting gets. So that's tragic to me, because these are the kind of things that if the UFC got behind, I think would have a much more healthy impact on the world. At least here you have an opportunity to defend, and you have an opportunity to actually fight, and there's a rite of passage element here. And I'm a huge fan of rites of passage. If you think historically, these are all things that happened in cultures and societies where young boys needed to become men and needed to be able to grow up to become warriors. This is really a warrior ritual, and it's teaching young men to become fighters, to face adversity, and it changes you when you do something like this. You take a 13-year-old boy who's been training, and his rite of passage is to have his first Dembe boxing match. That's massive. He becomes a man after that. And that's lacking in a lot of Western society. So beautiful to see it. I think that it's again something that I love, the connection to the spear and shield. I love that it's subconsciously teaching you to fight with weapons and that it's connected to warfare. And again, it's a singular tool, niche fighting system, which does have some degree of application. These guys are learning how to defend with one hand and how to fight with the other. It's just so, again, specific. Now, I'm not the type of person who hates on systems because they're specific. I'm the type of person who appreciates that. In the same way that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu spends 85 to 90% of its time on the ground and does not have striking. That to me does not take away from what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is. Same way Kyokushin doesn't allow face punching. That does not take away from what Kyokushin is. Same way Taekwondo is 90% kicks. It does not take away from what Kyokushin is. We do these systems. We spar. And Jesse Amkamp has a great video on this, and this is the end of these videos. I'm gonna finish with this note. Jesse Amkamp put out a video recently, something I've been saying for years. I don't know if you know who that guy is. He has a good martial arts channel. He's a karate guy. But my view of sparring is that sparring should always be playing the same way that animals play, because you're developing skills through play that allow you to actually improve. And if you're in a high stress situation all the time and you're trying to kill each other all the time, your sparring is not effective. Number one, you're going to be injured for when you actually have to go use it. I've noticed that. There's guys I know who are constantly have herniated discs, dislocated shoulders. Then you're out on the street. You think you're an effective fighter? I'd rather be half as effective as you, but not have the herniated discs and dislocated shoulder, because then I can actually defend myself on the street. I'd rather not have the brain damage. And I also noticed that my personal growth, the biggest growth I have in fighting and in martial arts, is when I'm reactive, I'm alive, I'm being pressure tested, but I'm also doing it in a way that has some degree of play, some degree of joy behind it, because I can do that for 2 hours straight. I can flow roll with you in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 2 to 3 hours, no problem. And I don't have neck problems afterward. I don't have joint problems afterward. But if we up the notch and we start trying to crank on each other and it just becomes crazy, I can do it for 10 minutes. Then I'm gassed out and my neck hurts for the next 2-3 days and I can't train. So the element of play is massive. And again, I see that in a lot of the training with Dembe boxing. I see that they play a lot, they move a lot, they do a lot of fun stuff. And then when it's time to fight these competitions, they clearly fight. They clearly come in to finish the fight. So again, I think something totally onto itself. I don't even know if that's something that is an English phrase, unto itself, but it's unique. It's beautiful. It has a history. And again, I wish Dana White had seen this and respected this instead of slap fighting. So I hope you enjoyed an introduction to Dembe boxing. And again, InsideFightingStore.com if you want to support the channel. I'll obviously appreciate it. If you want to subscribe, ring the bell, and share the video, that would be wonderful as well. I appreciate anything you do to help me keep doing this. Thank you guys so much for watching. Any recommendation you have for a martial art you want to see me cover below, just leave it in the comment section, and appreciate it.